Hello my dear friends, you're in the middle of the summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 17th of January of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. The situation with energy infrastructure in Ukraine is critical. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians published lots of videos on this matter. For example, this morning pro-Russian sources published a very interesting video from the theater of the city by the name of Bogodukhov. This is a part of Kharkiv region. Here we can see a Russian drone, most likely of Gerbera type, that was flying above the critical object of infrastructure, and right exactly at this moment we can see that this infrastructural object, was completely damaged or even destroyed. So the source that published this video also provided us the coordinates. So this is exactly the substation that was attacked and destroyed by Russians as a result of most likely another missile strike or as a result of drone attack. So this substation lays right exactly on the line that connects the city of Kharkiv and with the northern part of Ukraine and with the city of Kiev. Few hours later, another video was published, but this time from the area of the city of Kryvyi Rog. Here we can see the same story. A Russian drone of Gerbera type most likely was flying above the city, and right exactly at this moment, the author of this video is trying to show us the consequences of another attack that took place most likely during the previous several days. And as you can see, as a result of this attack, another substation was completely destroyed. So he's trying to show us the consequences of attack, the consequences of a very huge fire. And right after all these videos were published, another video was published, but this time from the area of the city of Kharkiv, but not by even pro-Russian sources, but pro-Ukrainian sources published this video. Here we can see a very heavy explosion. Today the Russians attacked the city of Kharkiv with several Iskander missiles, and this is not the first time when the Russians are attacking the city of Kharkiv with Iskander missiles. Several days ago, if you remember, the Russians, more precisely 2 days ago, the Russians attacked the city of Kharkiv with 5 Iskander missiles, and the mayor of the city of Kharkiv, Ternikhov, stated that the objects of critical infrastructure was completely destroyed. Several sources made the conclusion that most likely he was talking about the Kharkiv power station number 5. And today the Russians once again struck the city of Kharkiv with Iskander missiles, and currently the sources are saying that this time the Russians attacked the industrial zone of the city of Kharkiv. So as of now, we don't know for sure what exactly the Russians attacked or destroyed, but it's clear that the Russians are trying to destroy as many as possible objects of critical infrastructure during this period of time. And the most important, that yet the Russians haven't carried out their main, major and final attack on the Ukraine's infrastructural objects, but the sources are saying that this might happen within the next several days. And we believe that the attack on objects of critical infrastructure of Ukraine is going to be something like the answer to the proposal or concession that Ukrainians are trying to create right now with the United States of America. So I'm trying to tell you that according to information we have, the US and Ukraine will hold talks on January 17th in Miami. So today, these talks are going to take place today, and most likely Ukraine is going to make some concessions, and they're planning to provide some document where these concessions would be described. And most likely Ukraine is ready to make something regarding Donbas and other territories in exchange for a peaceful settlement of the conflict. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that just yesterday, the president of Ukraine had a meeting with the president of the Czech Republic, Petr Pavel, and they were talking about these things. And the president of the Czech Republic stated that Ukraine is prepared to make a number of painful concessions to achieve peace without specifying their content. So most likely with these concessions, the delegation of Ukraine is going to Miami today, and right after the Miami talks, the United States of America will hand over this document or these concessions to the Russian Federation. Then the Russians will consider this, concessions, this, document from Ukrainian side, and then Russians will make a decision whether to attack Ukraine with missiles and drones trying to deal significant damage to its infrastructure, or to accept this concession and to begin a peaceful process. So this is most likely the things that are going to happen within the next several days, not even days, maybe even hours, because I don't think that it will take time for the United States of America to hand over this proposal to the Russian Federation, because the Russians are not going to wait for months or days before they receive this document. They will try to make this as soon as possible during this cold period of time. The Russians will try to finish everything this week while the weather is the worst since the beginning of the special military operation, and according to the Russian understanding of the situation, this is the best time for them to force Zelensky to make some concessions in favor of a peaceful settlement of the conflict. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the situation is very interesting. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation and pro-Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, the group of forces East managed to improve their position significantly around the settlement by the name of Priluki. So this video was published by pro-Russian source, and here we can see how the clashes for the territory were taking place. As a result of clashes, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the territory, and this is how exactly the map been changing since the beginning of the 14th of January of 2026. So this is the end of the 14th of January, this is the end of the 15th of January. Several neutral mappers reported that the Russians began their major offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the villages along the river of Gaichur. By the end of the 16th of January, we received a report that Russians improved their position significantly around the village of Alena Konstantinovka, and by the end of the 17th of January, we received the report that Russians improved their positions around Priluki as well. Furthermore, a video was published from the area of the settlement of Tsvetkova and Svetopetrivka. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians on the territory of this huge stronghold. So as we can see, during the previous days, according to these updates, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. And now we can see one thing is clear. Currently, every single town, every single village along the river of Gaichur, from the settlement of Gulay Polya to the settlement of Andreevka, is either under complete Russian control or in the gray zone. So basically, the Russians today, by the end of the 17th of January of 2026, finish their primary task to create a foothold along the river of Gaichur on the Ukrainian side of the river. So currently, this mission was completed by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Now they have the next task, and the Russians currently are tasked to improve their positions further in the western direction and to create a foothold along railways that goes from the city of Gulay Polya further in the northern direction towards the settlement of Pokrovska. So now the Russians are to take under complete control these railways, and this is going to be the second task of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And when they finish this battle, the Russians will be able to begin their major offensive operation both in the direction of the city of Zaporozhye from the east and in the direction of the city of Orekhov from the northeast. But for this, first of all, to establish complete control over the railways. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. Now the clashes are taking place between the villages of Ilinka, Stepanovka and Dovga-Balka. The Russians are trying to breach Ukraine's defense, to break through Ukrainian defense layer, to improve their positions and to take under complete control the western and the southwestern parts of the Konstantinovka agglomeration. And everything depends on this. If the Russians are able to establish complete control over the territory and to force Ukrainians to fall back further in the northern direction, only from this very moment we can start counting days before the entire city of Konstantinovka falls in Russian hands. Now let's talk about the Slaviansk direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates, and the most important ones are coming from the area of the OMO3 road. The Russians during the previous 5 days managed to improve their position significantly, and currently this direction is the fastest direction where the Russians are advancing very fast, and the pace of offensive is the biggest of the entire line of combat contact. This is the situation by the end of the 12th of January. This is the end of the 13th of January. The Russians improved their positions in Nikiforovka. This is the end of the 14th 14th of January, the Russians improved their positions in fields towards the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka. This is the end of the 15th of January. The Russians shortened the lines, maintained the lines, and so on. By the end of the 16th of January, we received a report that Russians improved their positions on the territory of the village of Minkovka, and by the end of the 17th of January, the Russians improved their positions significantly around the village of Privilya. This information was stated by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Based on the report published by the Minister of Defense, we adjusted the map. So as we can see, the Russians finished the battle for the first defense layer of the city of Slaviansk. The first defense layer of the city of Slaviansk included towns and villages like Golubovka, Privilya, and Minkovka. And according to pro-Russian sources, according to neutral mappers, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, we can see the Russians have almost finished the battle for this defense layer. There is just one village left, Golubovka, but this is a very small village, and I don't think that Ukrainians will be able to slow down the Russians for a very long period of time in this area. And when the Russians finish the battle for this defense layer, they will be able to begin advancing further in the northern direction towards the second defense layer. And now we are talking about the villages of Lipovka, Dibrova, Fedorovka, Druga, Nikiforovka. Ukrainians will try to slow down the Russians in this area as much as possible. And right after this defense layer, the third defense layer appears, and this is the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka. And if Ukrainians lose control over the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka, then the battle for the Slaviansk power station begins. This is one of the most important battles because the Russians will try to save the infrastructure of the Slaviansk power station, because they're going to need this power station to supply and support their contingents in the cities of Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, if they are able to take these cities under control, and if they decide to move further in the northwestern direction towards the Kharkiv region. As for the Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions, and it seems that the major battle for the city of Liman has begun. This is the situation by the end of the 15th of January of 2026. The Russians began their moving inside of the city itself, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th of January. So as you can see, according to pro-Russian sources and neutral mappers, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the northern and the northeastern parts of the city of Liman, and the Russians continue advancing. Furthermore, the Russians continue bombing and destroying the Ukraine's logistics in this area along the river of Seversky Donetsk. During the previous 24 hours, another video was published by pro-Russian sources where we can see how the Russians discovered several bridges along the river of Seversky Donetsk, and how the Russians destroyed them with artillery strikes and with missile strikes. So as you can see, the battle for this Eastern Slaviansk bridgehead is intensifying. The Russians are advancing, and currently there are very heavy clashes. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. Probably several mappers adjusted the territory to the east of the city of Kupiansk back in Ukrainian favor. And according to some sources, I don't know, maybe as a result of Ukrainian counter-offensive operation, maybe as a result of something else, but according to some sources, the Russians were forced to fall back towards the line of combat contact that we used to see somewhere in May or June of 2025. So according to several sources, the Russians lost the progress on the ground that they managed to achieve during the previous 6 or 8 months. As of now, we don't know for sure whether it's true or not, but we have already discussed the situation yesterday. There is a very huge scandal between the commander of the Group of Forces West, the chief of the General Staff, and the Minister of Defense, and sooner or later the situation would be completely revealed, and we will understand what exactly is happening around the city of Kupiansk. As for the Kharkiv-Belgorod direction, the Russians during the previous 24 hours reported that they managed to destroy up to 100 drones that were launched by Ukraine in the direction of the city of Belgorod, and at the same time pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians struck back with Iskander missiles, and there was a very heavy explosion on the territory of the city. At the same time, the Russians continue advancing around the city of Volchansk, and during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions along the river of Seversky Donetsk around the settlement of Gravskaya, and the Russians are about to finish the battle for the city of Volchansky Hutory. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.